It is time to get this poll underway. You can check out on Instagram by the time this podcast is up. The Instagram post is rockin' and rollin'. And here's how we're going to do it. We three, of the names you guys recommended for Shopcat, we have picked each of our favorites. And from there, we're going to post that in a post, and you guys are going to vote on that post. Okay? So, Kent, what's your favorite?
Man, there were several in there that I really liked. I liked Leatrice by Richard Rapley.
That one was fun.
Good friend of Jay Kofer, a guy that we need to have on the show at some point. And then our good friend Laura Walter suggested Artie, which is short for, I don't remember what scientific name.
It's the genus of
white sage.
White sage.
Yes.
Yep.
So I thought that was a great one. Those are probably my
solid pick,
and they're good
Laura.
prairie names.
Yeah, that's true.
I went for something.
Didn't Riley say Mr. Whiskers? and nobody even typed that in.
I didn't see that one, but maybe it was there. I've always named cats by very boring things, like, oh, that's the yellow cat. You know?
Yellow one.
Honestly, when I saw Slippers, I was like, yeah, that's a good cat name. Like,
it's got some slippers on there.
Here you guys are thinking of deep things and suggesting deep things. I'm like, that's a yellow cat. It's got what looks like slippers. Good enough.
All right, Slippers. That's a great name.
There was a connection there though that the commenter said.
Yep. Also the name of Teddy Roosevelt's cat.
Yeah.
Which over Slippers, I would have picked Teddy. I would have.
That's how my dog got his name, Theo. Really? We were going to get a rat terrier puppy from my grandparents when Caitlin and I were first married, and the puppy we were going to get died before we could get him.
R.I.P.
So we were all had our hearts set on it. We knew Theodore Roosevelt liked rat terriers, and so we were going to name this puppy Theo. And then there was no puppy to name Theo, but we really kind of liked the name. So then we got Brittany instead, and I started my journey as a bird hunter and named our Brittany Theo because of Teddy Roosevelt.
Wow. That's beautiful. So my favorite pick, which also was the most, I believe, voted for name, is Shopcat. 2 syllables. It's hard to go more than 3 syllables. Like when Loris said Artemisia, I was like, that's too long. But then she's like, Artie for short. I said, okay, it's got 2 syllables. You need to be able to yell it.
Yep.
Artie,
get off that.
yeah, exactly. So we got Shopcat. We've got Artie or Leatrice, kind of. I'll put a fourth one in there. And then we've got Slippers. So check it out.
One I want to mention for all of you 90s rom-com fans, yes, those of you old enough to be as old as I am, probably the most famous 90s rom-com was You've Got Mail. And the username for the main character, Meg Ryan, is Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Her username for her email instant messenger or whatever was Shop Girl, because she owned a bookshop. And so my wife's like, you should name the cat Kathleen Kelly, because that was the character's name. I'm always a big fan of human names for animals. I just think it's more funny that way. I think we told the story of my wife's uncle's cat named Jim.
Yeah, that freaks me out.
Because he named it after his older brother, Jim Paw, who always stole his food. Jim the cat always stole his food.
I'm a big fan of naming humans animal names, actually.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
like
Mr.
Dusty. Oh, man. Welcome back to the Prairie Farm Podcast, Coffee Time Wednesday. I'm your favorite host, Nicholas Leary, with favorite co-host, Kent Boucher, favorite co-host to the co-host, Riley Rosendahl. It's a little chilly this morning.
I'm dressed for the weather.
I really thought it was going to be warmer. I'm here in my...
Nick didn't bring a coat today.
I did not bring a coat today. I remember us talking about
He's also wearing a Speedo. Thank goodness this video's from the waist up.
They're really comfortable. I've been in laundry in a little while. And I remember us chatting about doing field work today. And so I'm thinking at least 55 degrees if we're doing field work. No, it was 43 when I got in my truck this morning. And I thought, it's a little chilly. And I did not go back inside and get a sweatshirt. I put them all away for the winter. My
that was
two
a bad
sweaters.
move.
Yeah.
At least the Milwaukee sweatshirts been lost. Oh wait, didn't you find it recently?
Yeah, I found it in the back of my wife's RAV4. And then I put
growing
it right
stuff.
back down, and I didn't bring it inside. So I think it's still back.
If you go
there.
back into like the archives, well, actually no, I don't know if any of those pictures still exist, but there's some pictures out there on the internet. Maybe if you go on my account, you might find it of Nicholas in the infamous Milwaukee hoodie that
It was
he
a
lived
great
in.
hoodie.
He lived in that thing.
It was a great hoodie. Kent is jealous he didn't have a self-heating hoodie. Well, I never hooked up the self-heating. Maybe one time.
I didn't
ever.
know it had that feature.
Oh yeah, it was a great hoodie.
That's how Nick survived the winter that year because he had no heat in his
No
house.
heat, but the Milwaukee
Or running water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're sleeping under the Milwaukee sweatshirt. That's funny.
Oh, well, today our listener question comes to us from Travis, and it's a great question, one that you can do something about right now. And I want to say here, Travis, he gets all my movie references. And by the way, I had someone else reach out to me this last week and say they died when they heard me refer to you as Eugene Krabs and do the money.
I think it might be the funniest thing you've ever done in your whole life, Ken.
But so this guy, he gets my 90s and early 2000s reference as well because he says he's 41. So he said, so you don't have to feel too bad about being old. Thank you, Travis. I don't feel too bad about being old. He said, here's what he says. My question involves strips of native grass I planted along the streams and hillsides surrounding my food plots. Great move there. Helps slow down some erosion. They are approximately 30 feet wide. Along the streams, I planted a monoculture of switchgrass, and it is quite thick. On the hillsides, I planted a mix of Indian grass, big bluestem, little bluestem, switchgrass, Canada wildrye, and eastern gamma grass. I would like to increase the diversity within both sets of planting, and I am wondering what I can do. I fear it isn't as simple as broadcasting a variety of seeds into the existing stands. Do I need to create a blank slate and start over? Can I do it in a patchwork style? I think this question will resonate with a lot of hunters and land managers and is applicable over a large portion of the United States. I agree with you, Travis. I think it's a great question, and it's one of the most challenging to answer as far as prairie maintenance goes, which is why I'm going to make Nick start us off.
All right. If this was my field, because it is a difficult thing to do, especially switchgrass, eastern gamma grass, some of those taller, thicker, more dominant, competitive grasses. This is exactly what I would do. I would burn in the fall after a killing frost, so late October, 1st of November, and then I would seed my forbs in or other grasses, whatever you're trying to get in there, in December. And frankly, because I'm not a guy of finesse, not like a finesse dude, I would do that over and over again. And now if you don't want to do it every year, you could maybe do it every other year. But you get enough of those species. And to be frank, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on the really expensive forbs that are harder to grow and that kind of stuff. The reason is because forbs that are expensive because they're hard to grow and harvest. And if they're hard to grow and harvest, that means they're going to struggle to show up in your field as well, or that's a general rule of thumb. So what I would do is I take the cheapest forbs I can find, not because they're cheap and because I don't want to spend money, but they're cheap because they're really easy to grow. They're really easy to get to pop up. Wild bergamot, black-eyed Susan, sweet black-eyed Susan, purple prairie clover, gray-headed coneflower, long-headed coneflower, pale purple coneflower I'd probably even throw in there, rattlesnake master I would throw in there, prairie cinquefoil, foxglove penstemon. That's another thing, is I would lean heavy on those early bloomers because they don't have the competition as much right away. Golden Alexander, alum root, those kinds of things for grasses, Virginia wildrye, Canada wildrye, June grass, even blue grama, depending on where you're at. I would burn in the fall, and then I would plant in the fall, and I would do that a few times, and I would lean on species that are cheap, and the reason is because cheap is easier to grow, and they'll have an easier time showing up.
And you still get the benefit of having a big addition of variety and diversity into your stand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I'd maybe say in there too is maybe look into experiencing with a little bit earlier burn than after the killing frost. We really need. We're planning to. We just want to do it live, and we want to have Jeremy French back on to talk burn science with us. So I'm not the expert here. This is just me kind of trying to remember some principles that I learned recently on summer burns, or like really early fall burns, very late summer, early fall. I think the idea there is you're hitting those grasses with fire when they're most vulnerable, like they're not yet quite producing viable seed, and you're setting them back to allow room for forbs to come to do well. And a lot of the forbs, by the point that grasses are maturing, a lot of the forbs have already dropped their seed and are senescing for the year. So I would maybe experiment with that, but I also like that his idea with the patchwork style too.
Yeah,
if you're going to use some herbicide to maybe kill off some existing cover that you already have established, and maybe then try and create a stronghold of forbs here and there, and maybe allow that to kind of move its way
something
through
else
the prairie.
You could do is, if it really is a monoculture of those dominant grasses, Big Blue, Indian, you could do really light Roundup in the middle of May, and what it does, it won't kill it, but it will set them back, and then plant right after that. I've never experimented with that, but just off the top of my head, that feels like it would work. And Dad has talked about light sprayings to set grasses back. Just a light dose of Roundup. Honestly, even a full dose of Roundup won't totally kill out your switchgrass and Big Blue 7-inch grass. So, But if you did a light amount in the middle of May and then planted at the end of May, I'm willing to bet you would have some success there.
Yeah. Anything to add with bison, Riley?
No, because they would tear it down. I would say, like on the patchwork, I think you could experience a lot of success from developing strongholds based on there's going to be, if you've got an entire ridge line, odds are you're going to have a couple sandy patches that haven't really filled in as much with your, especially if you're experimenting with cheaper forbs, where you might not have to go so hard in the Roundup, or it might be a good place to start, get those established, and then you can do more patchwork where you might be actually experimenting with like full spray Roundup, stuff like that. So depending on your interest in using it and stuff like that, that could work too.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, that was a great question.
Yeah.
Reach out, social@theprairiefarm.com to claim your reward. There's a couple other people who have emailed me to claim the reward. I am so sorry. I'm getting killed with emails right now. I promise I'm getting back to you. And if you have a question, social@theprairiefarm.com. We want to hear your questions. This was the lightest week of questions so far. We got 2. But we know there's a lot of them out there because I get them on the phone a lot.
Yeah, we do get a lot of questions.
So
on the
shoot us
phone.
your questions, not only because you want them answered, but I think it'll be really helpful for other people, because if you're going through it, you're probably not the only one. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. All righty. Well, today's topic, speaking of Jim Paw, comes from Jim Paw this week.
Man, what a guy. It's between like him and Fritch and Judd McCollum who give us the most.
the most stuff to talk about. Although Laura sent me a funny Onion article this last week. That would have been good. It was about gig pollination for bees. Anyways, this article is titled "An Age of Extinction is Coming. Here's How to Survive." It's by Ross Douthat, I think is how you pronounce that, from the New York Times. And the key word for this article would be bottleneck. So we have a podcast coming out this Friday, which is with Dr. Julie Meachin, a previous guest on the podcast, who is going to talk to us about this news on the direwolf claimed de-extinction.
Yeah, super stoked.
You guys are going to love it. I mean, it is a fantastic interview. A lot of what's the inside baseball type of scoop here, where you're getting to take a look behind the curtain a little bit and see what's going on. And we talked about in there the risk of when you just are cloning animals, you end up with this bottlenecking event where it's the same genes being used over and over again. So we'll talk more about that. And I think that's where this author is borrowing that term from. Of course, we use the term bottleneck for all sorts of things, but when you tie it to extinction, that's really the idea. And really what he's saying is, technology, especially digital technology, has caused a lot of aspects of what it means to be a human to go away. It's changing human behavior, and that's obvious, right? Things like social media, online dating, being able to you don't have to go to a movie anymore. You can just order the movie from your couch, or you certainly don't have to go to Blockbuster anymore because it doesn't exist because of the fact that you could, because Netflix came along, and then Netflix evolved into what it is today, and so many other streaming services have popped up along the way. And
but you don't even have to get up to buy clothes or even put on clothes. You put on a shirt, get on a Zoom call, wear your Speedo because you can't see the bottom half of your body. Yeah. And you know what I mean? You don't have to do anything. You know?
Right. So the article, I mean, that's exactly right. The article is essentially focusing on the fact that a lot of the things that people used to do even gets into there used to be all these clubs that existed. These what's the right word? Almost philanthropic, I guess. I don't think that's quite the right word, but like Lions Club, where guys are coming together, gathering money for community service things, right? Mm-hmm. Pooling money for that. Things like Elks Lodges and Lions Club, Kiwanis, Rotary, all those types of things. Churches, whereas it was another thing that was mentioned. Yep. And people are he's like, there's a downward trend for a lot of, even college attendance. There's this change in how people how that's become a part of human life, and in some of those ways it's like, kids used to play with a stick and a hoop, you know what I mean? And that evolved into paddleball, which I always sucked at, but or ping pong, I mean, so there's natural, there's just natural changes, I think is part of that. But really where his deepest and just to be clear, this is, I mean, it's a very well written article, and he makes some very compelling points, but I think you would probably place it under op-ed, philosophical type of an article. So, I mean, we're not given hard data here, but an area where you might find some data would be just how populations are aging around the world. Mm-hmm. And birth rates are decreasing. The number of people getting married and when they're getting married is changing. And so that's his real ultimate point is a lot of people have become disinterested in these old school institutions that defined human culture and how we continued on through generations. And one of those he's concerned about, especially now, is we're ready to take this next giant leap. And in some ways, it feels like we already have with AI. But let's be honest, a lot of AI exists in the form of ChatGPT asking a question or a little bit of research stuff, funny image generations. It's like a toy still in a lot of ways, but it's becoming a tool, and it's becoming something that is going to really define life in these. It's going to be a big enough change. It's going to rewrite human history to some degree. And
how long before you think we get robots around the house?
Well, I believe is it Tesla that or. Who is that? Is that who
everyone's making them? I don't know who's the head.
I think Elon Musk said that he had a model that he predicts will be as affordable as 10 grand or something like that.
That's crazy.
And that was quite a while ago. I heard that. But the point being, the extinction that he envisions coming out of this, he said, when you look through, and we great reference back to our Connie Mutel conversation, the sixth great extinction event is upon us.
Yeah.
Loss of biodiversity. His point is, extinction events historically have come by way of meteorites and plague and floods and these huge gigantic disasters that are out of our control. And this one kind of is in our own control. People will gradually become less interested in carrying on as we have as a species for a long time.
Do you think human nature is within our control?
Not
the code that makes up a computer is within the computer's
not
control?
entirely, that's for sure. I mean, that's why addictive substances exist and are profited off of. But I do think that what the author was, I guess, trying to achieve with his article was, if you have some of those old elements that are still a part of your life or interested, cherish those things. Try and I guess foster them in the next generation's life. Things like reading to your kids from an actual book. If you like hiking or being in nature, do it. If you like having or try to have face-to-face interactions with your friends and family, don't make all your relationships happen through text message or sending reels on Instagram or whatever. You need to have those things.
One of my goals
that make us human still be a part of your life.
One of my goals last year was to write 12 letters and send them. I sent a bunch. I didn't hit 12, which is that's so silly. People used to sit down like every other day and write several letters, and send them out. I think those simple things. It's interesting because with the AI and stuff like that, if we no longer ever have to do laundry or dishes or wash our car or any of the small things, will that prove to be good for us? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm not saying that they won't be useful or helpful in some way, but
what do we do when we get a whole bunch of time on our hands?
Yeah.
Rarely it's like, you know what? I think this is the time. I'm going to go get that one thing done that I've been, it just doesn't happen that way.
No one's going to I would usually say I finally get to cleaning my car, but
right.
That's the thing. But I don't think that is necessarily better or worse for us to have someone else do a thing. I mean, we used to have to grow a lot of our own food, and no one has to do that anymore. The farmers are a very small percentage of the population, you know what I mean? And then we got disconnected from it. But I think if you can't find joy in some of those things, the face-to-face interaction, the small things in life that we are desperately trying to pawn off on someone else, if you can't find joy in those things, I'm fully convinced you're not going to find joy after someone else is doing it for you, and because your internal being drives your external being, your external world, and if your internal being doesn't experience any joy right now, just because your exterior world changes doesn't mean your interior world's still going to be the same. You won't have a bunch of that joy. I don't know. I talked about this. You guys will hear it on Friday. I talked about the Jenga piece, but when I talked to my friends about conservation, why it's a big deal, and I had one friend who's like, so I don't understand, why is it a big deal that we bring animals back from extinction? And obviously pros and cons going on there, but I told him, well, the world is like a big Jenga puzzle. You can pull out a couple pieces and be fine. But we're not replacing those pieces with anything, and we're pulling out a lot of them, and it's not good, So that's the thing that, for me, I'm most afraid in the physical world of extinction is one day the tower just comes tumbling down, and it stops raining in the Midwest, or I think we
what the author would probably hope for all of us to do is to maybe look at what he wrote, consider where we're at personally, and try and make some concerted effort to find a way to still be human. And so I think that was a great suggestion you had, Nick, with writing letters, reading a book to your kids, planting a garden, putting in some native plants in your landscaping or in your yard or whatever. All great ways to intentionally still connect to the real here and now.
Yeah. My wife's sister's in town, and she's leaving today. So last night we were going to get food, trying to figure out what we were going to do for dinner, and we almost ordered Mexican and took it back home. And I was like, you know what? If we bring it back home, we'll probably put on a movie, or we won't hang out. So let's go to the restaurant and sit across from each other and do that. And it was a great experience. It's walks. I never want to go on a walk, but I know, just from enough experience, if I get myself up and I go on the walk, I will love it and I'll have a great time. Those little things, but getting over that little hurdle, but it's so much easier to not do anything. It's wired in us. The path of least resistance is literally like a human physiological principle that drives us. So we have to fight that, and that's hard.
Yep, definitely.
Man. Well, don't forget, guys, it's time. You can order some seed. HoxieNativeSeeds.com or theprairiefarm.com, which will just take you to HoxieNativeSeeds.com.
Also, if you're hearing any wind noise on the mics, we apologize. The wind is blasting through the shop right now.
Yeah, it is rough. But we appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you again next time.